Welcome to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. In this segment, James and I run through the scenarios that creative workers sometimes encounter. How do you talk about your work at a party? How do you describe your work when you're pitching it to somebody who might want to buy it? And how do you describe the actual process that you use for creating something? Hope you enjoy.
Hey, Pat, stop laughing for a minute. We got to do some content.
Yeah, I know. Okay, I'm here.
All right, I'm down in the Gifted Underachievers content cubicle. I'm not liking it. I'm not liking it.
It's a bit of a shithole.
Yeah, it's a total shithole. I'm not. The walls are ecru. There's no art. It's just a little tiny lamp, and it's like a lump of a lamp. I don't like it. So we got to get this going.
Are you sure that's a lamp? I think the dog was in there earlier.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, well, that could be true. As long if the dog is eating or drinking a lot of photophosphorescent glow sticks.
Yeah. I mean, is it warm? Anyway, let's not get hung up on the lamp.
Well, it reminds me of a story, but I won't go there.
Please don't. What are you doing down there?
Well, I was thinking about this question. How do you describe your creativity? And then that got me to thinking, there's a lot of pieces to that. Yeah. So there's not just, it's a very broad question. So then I narrowed it down, and I've come up with sort of three zones or three topic areas. And, how do you describe your creativity in terms of, you're at a party and somebody says, what do you do? Yeah. And then there's the next, how do you describe your creativity when you're trying to pitch it to somebody? Right?
Pitch like a story or pitch?
Yeah, pitch a story or yourself as a, editor, ghostwriter, all those kinds of things. Like, how do you package what you do in a way that's, I guess, marketable? And then the other is, somebody were, to be curious about how does your creative mind work? And you have to explain that. Right?
Yeah.
So I figured we would start with number one, because I think this is important, because how we as creatives think of ourselves, I think is probably an important piece of how we show up in the world. Right. And there's no more sort of general way of showing up than when you're out socially and somebody says, what do you do?
Yeah.
So here you are, Pat, you're out. You've got your, you've popped open your can of gin.
Popped open that can of straight warm gin.
Yep, straight warm gin.
Even though in the back alley with my buddies.
You're out with the buddies in the back alley.
They're imaginary, so.
And no. I mean,
No, I'm joking. I'm not a part.
You're at a nice place, right? And people who, not necessarily that you want to suck up to impress, but you want to carry yourself. Yeah. Somebody says, what do you do? What are you going to, what do you tell them?
I say I'm a book editor.
Really? You don't start with writer?
No, I never mention my creative stuff.
Really? Why? Yeah. How come?
Because, two reasons, actually. One is that they say, well, where can I buy your book? And I'm like, probably not that many places. Because, it's a small, the last one I had published was like a very niche, local novella. And so even people I've known for a long time went to the 3 bookstores I knew that stocked it. None of them had it in. So they didn't, people don't know that you have to order books sometimes. Like they don't always stock every single book. So it just gets too complicated too early. If somebody doesn't know me well enough to know what I do, then I just start with I'm a book editor, because then it's a more interesting conversation. It doesn't narrow into the sort of, least available part of my personality. It's a lot broader, because then I can talk about different types of books that I work on, how much I, love being a professional reader. all that stuff. And then eventually it'll come out that I have a book, or sometimes, like I was at a party / book launch before Christmas, and I was introduced to a woman by mutual friend. And when she heard my name, she said, "The Pat Doby," because she had just bought my book. And I was like, wow. So that's one of the reasons I think it's a more interesting entree to a discussion. It doesn't immediately have me be this is the focus of questions or anything. And then another reason is probably 10 years ago, I was in a writing workshop. I can't remember what it was about. It was a half-day workshop at a downtown university campus. And the person teaching it, it was about scenes, detail in scenes. And she was huge. I think it was an Alice Munro fan. And so we unpacked a couple of Alice Munro stories. And she said at one point, just casually, she said, "I don't even tell people I'm a writer." Her name's Caroline Anderson. She's got 10 books published, traditionally published.
Really?
And she said, they just, people don't know what to do with it because they've never heard of me. And so I end up feeling kind of shitty about the fact that they've never heard of me, even though I've got 10 books out and I'm basically making a living between writing and teaching. She's not, she doesn't want to have that conversation either. And I just thought, that's cool. You don't have to say what you do. So she actually tells people she's a teacher because that's where she gets some of her money too. And so I took that as a freedom to just say whatever the fuck you want, like about when people ask you, what do you do? Oh, say whatever you want. I'm retired. Oh, fuck you, none of your business.
Now what do you, if somebody digs a little bit deeper, right? So, what do you do? Well, I'm a book editor, and then they go, well, what does that mean? How do you
I just tell them I love my job so much. So I just tell them how much, I just tell them exactly what I do, what kinds. I work on fiction, nonfiction, life writing, memoir. I work with writers all over the world. I help them. I usually do developmental editing. So I help them figure out, the story and the character arcs and all that stuff. So I read their work and then I go through a process where I kind of analyze it and come up with what works and what needs work, and then a revision plan. It's very simple to explain, really. It's not that simple to do. And then, if they want more, then I mentioned that I also teach how to developmentally edit. I teach writing. I do some writing. I keep the writing pretty low key. And then the very last thing I might mention is that I co-host a podcast. It just depends on who they are and what lights their eyes up. And also, I'm asking them questions too. So sometimes the conversation just turns right around to whatever they do. And we have a good one. Yeah. So it's not important to me what people think. When I worked in international conferences, I would say I'm a senior project manager in logistics for the international conference and trade show industry. And then people would go, wow, that's a cool job.
Yeah.
When I say I'm a book editor, people have different responses. I was at the physio the other day because of my arm injury, and it turns out the physio is a huge, huge book nerd, and has like some of the original Hardy Boys like that have brown covers. They're 100 years old.
Wow.
Got an attic full of books. So we had a great conversation. He doesn't really. He asked me what I'm working on, and I told him I'm actually working on 3 fiction projects. One's a cozy mystery, and we just have conversations like that. Readers know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When you're talking about books, people who don't really read might just think you're correcting punctuation. It doesn't matter to me what they think.
Well, people who do a lot of reading really understand that there's a lot of books out there, right?
Yeah.
And so, but people who don't do a lot of reading or don't really think about it that much, kind of the next thing they want to know is, oh, where can I get your books, or who, how would I have heard of you, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of that, I don't know, maybe it's a little uncomfortableness that I would feel, because I do the same thing, right?
What do you say?
Well, I say I'm a writer because I'm a ghostwriter.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
That's your main source of income.
That's what I lean. And people go, oh, well, what do you write? And I'm like, well, I earn my living as a ghostwriter, but for myself, I write short stories and work on, a lot of fiction and that kind of thing. And they go, well, what do you do as a ghostwriter? And I say, well, da 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 da. And then they go, where can I get your books? right?
Which,
And
yeah.
I say, or, which ones would I have read? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, how could you?
And I can't really talk to you about it because, I'm not allowed to. But the other piece of it is, a lot of the stuff that I do is so niche anyway that
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like, well, are you really, really into medical research
Mm-hmm.
stuff? I don't know. I guess it gets a little uncomfortable because it feels like the expectation from some people is that you need to have a big book that they would
Mm.
have, right? And it's like, no, I work in an industry where there's a handful of these big books that are out there and big authors. But there's thousands upon thousands of these other books that serve very important purposes, or, the ones that are the creative projects like the memoir, narrative nonfiction, that they find their audience,
Mm-hmm.
but their audience isn't, nobody's on the front page of the New York Times for. You know
Yeah,
what
I
I
mean,
mean?
I see what you're saying. I don't personally feel so much of an expectation from anybody. Sometimes depending on what they say after I say I'm a book editor, I just feel like I don't know that they're at this party to be educated on the publishing industry. So let's not even go there, and just
Yeah,
redirect
yeah,
the topic basically, because it's not my job to, or my preference to stand around at a party talking about publishing with somebody who's
mhm,
never experienced it. So yeah, I get what you're saying. It's just
yeah,
I don't feel any vibe from them. Maybe I'm too self-centered. I just think. If they don't know, that's fine.
yeah.
Move on.
Well, I mean, I think when you can say that, to the answer to that question is a creative pursuit, right? I'm an
Yeah,
actor, I'm a
yeah,
comedian,
yeah.
or
True. I can
you're
imagine.
going
Yeah.
to generate some
Mhm.
curiosity and interest because, it's not, there's a lot of us out there, but there's a lot more people, going to a 9 to 5 and
Yeah,
doing wonderful, interesting things, no
yeah,
doubt. Um,
yeah. You know
there's,
what?
there's always a curiosity,
That's
especially
probably the difference. Because you say I'm a writer, I don't say that, but I know if somebody. I've been at a party where there was a lot of actors there. 'Cause it was an actors' party. One of my friends from high school. And I had to rein myself in when somebody would say, "I'm an actor," I'm talking to them, and I would look at them and go, probably microsecond of what have I seen them in.
yeah,
And if I didn't know the creative life, I might be gauche enough to say, "Oh, what would I have seen you in?" But because
yeah,
I know that that's a loaded question for creative people, because of the nature of the creative industry and the fact that there's a lot of unseen people doing it, I
mhm,
just never ask that because I know that it's it's going to cause them to have to educate me, and I don't need to be
yeah,
educated. I already know enough to not need that. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do. 5% of what we do is above the surface, and 95% of our effort is never seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and sometimes you get these people who, feel like if you haven't hit that New York Times bestseller, then how good could you really be? This is somebody, and so, and I wonder if that's my own interpretation or what, but I know, living around Boston, there's a lot of that,
Okay. Yeah. Maybe it's regional. Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You can definitely get into environments where
Yeah.
that question carries a lot
I
of
would
weight.
imagine, like New York, maybe too, the
Yeah.
heart of publishing in North America, even though they're mostly European-owned multinationals, there's still everybody thinks of the heart of publishing in the English language as being basically New York or London. So yeah, I can see that or I bet in Hollywood for sure for actors,
Oh yeah.
it would be it's just a minefield, and you'd have to come up with a shtick, you know,
Mhm.
either self-deprecating or, I don't know how actors would answer that question in an industry town. That would be quite
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. 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 That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Sure. So, all right. So I think interesting. And then, the other thing is how do you describe your creativity in a pitch?
Yeah, you go first on this one.
Okay, so I'm going to focus on short stories because that's, where I feel like I'm really pitching my creativity and to a gatekeeper who doesn't know me, right?
Yeah.
And so I keep a one for each short story,
Oh,
and
great.
I include all of the different pitches that I use,
Yeah,
and
great.
different things, as well as a list of where it's been submitted, where it's been declined, if I've withdrawn it, where I've withdrawn it from. And I'm looking at my OneNote for a short story called Cynthia and Hal Yardley. And it's kind of funny. It's all over the place, right? Um, and so, at one point, I have this explanation of suffer the ennui so common to young married couples with children. Driving the babysitter home is more adventure than Hal anticipates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's others where I describe it as looking at, upper middle class bourgeois angst. And then there's the stuff where like I ran it through AI to like see what AI would say. And it's interesting. I don't have it labeled as such, but it is so obvious that it's AI.
Really?
That it really screams. But it's Cynthia and Hal Yardley is an original short story with a focus on rich character development and intimate domestic life that explores complex emotional and relational dynamics between its two protagonists, blah, 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 right? So,
Right.
like, tell me that's not AI.
Uh-huh.
So, I like to keep track of what I've tried, but also try and come up with new stuff, right? So it's you're pitching. I don't know how much the cover letter actually matters. I hope not very much. I hope it's content of the writing, but at the same time, I know in this business in particular, but any creative domain, you've got to get somebody's attention and you've got to pique their curiosity. And so I'm always looking for how can I pique the curiosity? And I'll think about what is an editor thinking about? What, is going to get them a little bit like, let's take a look at this. Even if it sounds a little odd, like this one, they suffer the ennui of domestic bourgeois life. Maybe like I don't think I would necessarily go, oh, I'm going to get that. If I was reading it as a book or thinking of buying it as a book, I might sort of be like, that's a bit too much. But I don't, a editor at a journal might pique their curiosity enough, I think. But I don't know, it's who knows? I mean, it's such a as we have often said that, this understanding the psychology behind it, gatekeepers and what they'll choose and what they don't choose is a black box. And it happens for a variety of reasons that could have, and it could be completely due to the thing that you write in the cover letter because it creates an interest that gets them to give it a closer read, or it has absolutely nothing to do with that. So,
or it repels them and they don't bother opening the story.
Yeah, or it repels them and they don't bother opening it up at all. Who knows?
See, I don't know where I heard this or read it. That for submitting short stories versus submitting novels. Novels, you do this query letter. It's a pitch letter. I was told that for short stories, you don't explain the story at all. You give your short bio basically and say, here's my story. It's this number of words, and I am a blah blah writer living in blah blah with blah blah, and my work has appeared in blah blah. And you leave it at that. You don't even try to describe the story because that's not the point. The story is meant to convey what the story is. So you don't need that pitch sentence in a cover letter for a short story. Obviously, you know way more about that than I do because I never pitch short stories. So it's two different approaches.
Yeah, so I feel like you need for a short story, you need a little bit of a hook, and it's got to be short. I mean, like, maybe even less than a sentence, almost, right?
Yeah.
Because you just got to frame it so that whoever, if they are going through a process where they read the cover letter and then read the piece, I want to pique their curiosity. But I also, after listening to you talk, I'm wondering if maybe you create an expectation that way, and then when they read the story, it's not that the story isn't any good or anything like that, but you create one expectation and they read the story, but they take something completely different from it. And I think, there's that aspect of all creativity where we can describe as the creator of it what we think it is because we're inside of it. But what somebody else is going to see could be completely different. And it could be that anybody else who reads it or sees whatever it is, work of art or, movie or something that we've done, there may be some consistency to what other people see, right?
Yeah.
And wondering if we don't have the correct perspective to really be able to capture it in the best possible way, or in the way that the observer is going to interpret it.
Yeah. I mean, I when I got the Tenants, that little novella published, the publisher asked me to write the back cover copy, or the description of the story, and I didn't know how to describe it because I had written it so fast and I didn't know what it was about. It was about what it was about. Like, I'd have to read the story to know. And I tried, and I just was still unsure. So I sent it to my friend Hillary. She read the hard copy on a flight, and wrote a good back cover copy description. So I see what you're saying. I think my perspective would be, if you need to describe your work in a pitch, like with query letters, in order to get them to ask to see the work, then do it. And if you don't need to do it, if it's not an expectation, like when you're submitting a short story, don't do it and see what happens. Maybe as another experiment.
Yeah, we've got another experiment going. It's happening. It's gonna. Well, I think the test is to remove a variable, keep the others in, but remove it. And the variable that will be removed is that little bit of here's what this is about. And it more is the little bio thing, which again, very brief, and then that here's what I'm willing to do to help this story sell issues of your journal, that kind of thing. And that maps, it kind of maps to what you do for a book too, except with a book you absolutely have to describe what it's about. You have
to describe it because it's too long for them to read without knowing what it's about.
But I think there is something about this sort of I was going to say the speed of this, because journal editors are getting lots and lots of submissions, so they have to go through them quickly. What catches their eye today may not catch their eye tomorrow. So, you're up against that huge amount of subjectivity. But the same thing is true for a book, right? So
it's a different system. It's been designed for different purposes, basically.
And so it's hard to get that the thing that's going to break through in somebody's brain to get them to stop. And that's also the complete opposite. When I write, I think more in terms of I want the reader to flow through it. Whereas this, you want the reader to sort of stop and pay attention and think, oh, I'm now curious and I'm going to give this a little bit more attention than they otherwise would.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, all right. So then do you want to go on to number 3?
Explain how your creativity works. Was that number 3?
How does your creative mind work? How do you explain your acts of the creative, I don't know what you would call it, like when you're actually in the moment of creating? How does that work?
Wow. I would love it if somebody ever asked me that. It would well, you just have, but it's never really happened. People don't care. The closest I've gotten to having that happen is in a writing group where you're talking about process, basically, for part of the time, often in writing groups. And so you get a sense of how other people's minds work creatively just by how they talk about their process. But so for me, if somebody asked me, which I would say my creative mind works visually, probably quite a lot of the time. I start with an image and some kind of dissonance in the image. A grief-stricken man on a train who sees everything in a sinister light. There's 2 things going on. He's suffering from a lot of grief, and the world seems very hostile or like sinister. Those aren't necessarily the same thing. They could be related, but what's going on?
Yeah.
So it starts with the character usually for me, and then other types of creativity. I mean, if you expand it to even wider, well, let's start so that's writing. Writing usually is visual or just sometimes a question, like how do you reinvent yourself when you're drowning? That's the question animating my
Yeah.
Frankenstein novel. It's like
Ooh.
the force of conditioning has created this world where we're all just jumping through hoops that we don't give a shit about internally, but we think we do because we've been conditioned so hard. And then what happens is you just keep on taking more and more stuff, trying to pay your bills, trying to feel like you matter. All of these external forces are compelling you to overload yourself to become something. And then you realize, you wake up and go, what the fuck is going on? I'm drowning here. I know I don't recognize any part of my life as coming from me, but I'm too busy to reinvent myself. I have too many obligations, too many ties, too many ropes attaching me to the board. So so it's a question sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny for me, the ideas come from a lot of different things. One, it can be I want to evoke a feeling, right?
Yeah.
But it's a complex, it's not sad, happy, it's a very complex kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And other times I want to, explain an experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And it's not like an experience I went to the market and there was somebody yelling at the cashier about candy. It's more like, so I've been doing this deep dive into suburban life, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that stems from when I was a kid. I hated living in suburbia. I couldn't stand it.
Mm-hmm.
And I still to this, I'm like, either I want to be right in the city or I want to be, out with, in the country and that kind of thing. And I live in a bedroom community. So there you go.
Yeah.
But it's really just looking at how humans conform to their environment.
Yeah.
And the ways that they find to complicate that and entertain themselves, and the ways that they hurt each other and hurt themselves, and how boredom and being predictable and those kinds of things really push people into some very uncomfortable places.
Yeah, I love that.
Right. And so it's about trying to explain what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why as a writer I go, lean towards this literary stuff, because it's very directly here is life. And I love what you're explaining, because you're saying here is life, but I'm doing it within the context of this other kind of genre.
Yeah.
Right. You're still talking about the same things, but you're just choosing a different way to tell the story.
Yeah. I mean, I'm starting from a crisis, basically. So that's and so are you probably. Things come to a head probably very early in your stuff, So anyway, it's not so much what happens, but how do you deal with it as a writer, and also or a creative person, or a person period, and in your work, right? Like how close are you to hitting what you're trying to hit? Yeah, the more you do it, I guess the closer you get, but not always. I've missed the mark completely on entire novels where I've written like 3 drafts and gone, I didn't hit the mark at all. I'm still skirting the subject, and I need to just back away from this thing, put it in a drawer, maybe forget it ever existed, or maybe come back to it in 5 years,
So here's the question. When you're in the flow, right? When you're writing a story, how does that experience feel to you?
It feels like the kind of busy I love. It feels like I'm doing something absolutely irrelevant that only I give a shit about, and that I give a deep shit about it. Pardon my language. I don't know why that one sounded weird, but that I really care.
It was quite normal for Pat.
I care a lot, and so it's like I have this feeling like I'm in the right place doing the right thing that only I can do, and I don't not thinking about outcomes. I'm just thinking about, am I gonna look over here for the next thing that happens, or over there for the next thing that happens, and what'll be the ramifications of each? And then I like the tension between, when you're writing something, longer than 20,000 words, between zooming in and zooming out, of, zooming out to see if it's structuring itself as you go, and then zooming back in to get the moments of somebody putting something down on a table, and what that looks like from inside somebody else's psyche, and why the details of that moment matter, and how they inform the story. So it uses all of me. That's the only way I can think of it. And it's better than sex. It's better than eating. It's better than all the stuff I liked. Not that. Excuse me. This is too revealing. It's better than a lot of this.
Go.
It's better than that first cup of coffee in the morning, because it can involve all of those things. You're creating a world. You can do whatever you want, So it's very absorbing, I guess. So how about you?
So after all that, yeah, no, the way that I've always described it, and what I'm talking about is when I'm there and I'm writing, and I'm doing it, and the words are coming. Not, I have an idea and I go and jot a note or something like, this is like, it's actually happening, and I'm really liking what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying that moment. And there's a sensation that I get that, so I used to play music, right?
Yeah.
In a band in front of an audience. And you get this high when the band is really there together in the same place, the audience is with you, and you're in this co-creation moment, and you get this high and this energy. And I get the same energy when the writing is going well. And I get the same shitty fucking feeling when it's not, you know? Like you hit a off note, or you go in a bad direction or something like that. It's just like, fuck. And there are plenty of times where I'm writing along and I'll just be writing and I'll think, you know what? I'm just putting words on a page. I'm not actually creating anything right now.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And so I'll stop and I'll go back and I'll reread it, and I'll be like, yeah, I'm not poking through, right? I'm just glancing off of something.
Yeah.
And then, I'll cross it all out and I'll think, okay, really, what is happening? What is it that I'm trying to capture? What do I need to do to this character? And, sometimes it's relatively simple in that I need to harm this character in some significant way.
Yeah.
So that I can regain this, but it needs to feel real, and it needs to feel authentic, and it can't be, take the reader out of the story. Right. So there's those moments, but when I'm in it and I'm in that, they call it the flow state, which I kind of, I'm not a big fan of that term, but it feels the same as when I was playing music and it was working.
Yeah. Kind of the same. I mean, I think we're talking basically about the same state. My flow state encompasses the writing itself, and then it encompasses the part where I finish a scene or whatever I was just doing and look up and go, I am so into this, And then I love the part where I think about what comes next, and then just take an idea and drag it down onto the manuscript and see what happens. Like, that's fun. That's really fun.
And there's also where you're in it, and the words are just coming.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like you're not going, okay, I now need to write this. I now need to write that.
Yeah.
And it's really, again, it's the same thing with music, where you've practiced your instrument, you've rehearsed, you've had it in your hands for, thousands of hours. And so when you're up there playing the notes, you're not even really thinking about it. They're just, they're coming, right? And it's the same thing, with the writing, is that you're not thinking about, if each word is a note, you're not thinking about those notes. You're thinking about how it all sounds together. And and it's really just, and you get that energy.
And I think that's the unsung joy of being in mid-level, is that you have done your 10,000 hours, so you're not struggling anymore with the craft as much. You're more struggling with other things, and that's fine. Like, it's fine. That's what our whole shtick is about. We're underachieving massively all over the place, but we're at a certain,
we are
threshold.
overachieving at underachieving.
Yeah, we are such. Oh my God, we've been overachievers.
We're the best at it.
Well, so where have we gotten then? We've talked about how we explain our creativity, A, at a party, B, in a pitch, and C, like how our minds work if somebody is interested enough to wonder. And in fact, even I think how your creative mind works could encompass your process. I'm interested in actors' process. One of my friends is an actor, and she was telling me that they did this play called "'Tis Pity She's a Whore," a line from Marlowe or something, and it was really, really intense. And she said, preparatory to a scene where the couple was supposed to have just finished having sex, she and the guy who played her partner and the couple were backstairs, like doing push-ups and jumping up and down because they wanted to rush out all breathless. and I don't know if it was somebody backstage or just looked at them and said, "You guys should just have sex." I mean, it would be. That kind of stuff really makes me love creative work, because it's so weird how people get themselves into the state where we're just describing.
Yeah, no, it's true. There's things that I do to get into that writing mode, because it doesn't just happen. Like, you don't just sit down and out it goes. Yeah.
You got your weed, your Smarties, your lap dance.
Yeah, my toque.
your toque. Your pot of kimchi.
Yeah. Well, that's percolating out back into the snow right now, but yeah, you got to get yourself going. So, you got to put your, for the head to work in the right way, you got to be in the right space.
Yeah, so. Yeah, you got to kind of do the takeoff routine.
All right.
Okay, we're getting weird.
I'm gonna call it good there.
I think we've just revealed far too much about ourselves, but anyway.
I know this third question has provoked some rather interesting commentary.
I'm feeling uncomfortable. Thanks so much for listening to Gifted Underachievers, the podcast for mid-level creatives with delusional ambitions. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Hope you have a great creative week.